Okay, I want to call to order the regular board meeting of the Benton County Board of Commissioners. We're in Prosser. Today's March 18th. It's 9 a.m. Please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Next, approval of the March 11th meeting minutes, please.
Chair, I'll make a motion to go ahead and approve the meeting minutes for March 11, 2025.
Second. I have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The motion passes. Review agenda. Anything to add?
Nothing.
No. Okay. With that, please, Amanda, the audio for the public comment.
The purpose of the public comment period is to give the audience an opportunity to provide comments to commissioners regarding agenda items or other topics. It is an official on-the-record communication geared toward giving information and opinions to consider in the decision-making process. While the commissioners welcome hearing from you, please note that the public comment period is not an opportunity for dialogue with commissioners or for posing questions with the expectation of an immediate answer. Many questions require an opportunity for information gathering and deliberation. For this reason, the commissioners will accept comments, but will not directly respond to comments, questions, or concerns raised during the public comment period. Audience members who wish to speak should raise your hand to be called upon by the chairman, or virtual participants use the raise hand feature. Come to the podium, or virtual participants unmute your microphone when called upon. State your name and address for the record. And after speaking, write your name and address on the record sheet. Virtual participants do not complete this step. To allow every participant an opportunity to be heard, public comments will be limited to 3 minutes per speaker. The chairman will indicate when your allowed time has elapsed. In the interest of running an orderly meeting, we ask that you do not duplicate comments made by a previous speaker. Instead, please simply confirm your agreement with previous statements. When appropriate, the commissioners may refer an item identified during public comments to the county administrator for further action. Please note that if a speaker intends to give commissioners any records of any kind as a part of a presentation, the records must be handed directly to the clerk of the board for distribution.
Thank you, Amanda. Mr. Atkins, are you coming forward? Yes. Okay. Did you get answers to those? Yes. Okay.
Jim Atkins, Prosser, Washington, and thank you. I was going to make a comment. I did get answers to my questions, previous questions. I do have a couple of questions here. Every once in a while, there's a previous resolution mentioned in activities going to take them today. And I was wondering if they could be, those resolutions could be added to the reading material for that event that's taking place today. Otherwise, it might be a 2017 resolution. And how are you going to, and the other question is IT. Can they make a special page easily accessible to find resolutions? If I had to go back to look for one, just a page, to where.
There must be a way to search for that, yeah.
Yeah, because it's not easy. It's not easy. And you need to make it,
So okay, go ahead.
user-friendly,
Yeah.
user-friendly.
Right.
And then,
Okay.
go ahead.
Go ahead, no.
And then also, some RCWs, I see the same thing there. There's somebody make a comment about an RCW and they'll make a comment. I haven't checked it to see if it's the full RCW in there, and then just something to look at. And today, my question is on the Office of Public Defense, clarity there. If you take a look, it says that Shauna Morse left Harrington Investigations and is now doing business as 180 Investigations. So it is therefore appropriate to amend the professional services agreement with investigator Shauna Morse to provide for a contract payee name change. It says she left them, so now does she have a new contract doing business as her own? Is that her own company? You know, is that, you can't just say a name change unless, you know, you have a contract, I'm assuming. So, and then, so I thought that's something to look into. And then you go to the Rural County Capital Fund, when you look at all the signatures by the cities in the port, you can't read the signatures. I mean, how, you know, you got to put a stop to that somewhere. I mean, I wouldn't sign a loan mortgage and they wouldn't take my signature if it wasn't clearly written. That's all I have.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else here in Prosser? Anyone else in Prosser? Kennewick? Kennewick? I don't see anyone. Are you on, Commissioner McKay, are you on WebEx?
I don't see him. He's on
No
WebEx.
hand raised? No? You see anything on, no, either? Okay, with that, then we'll close public comment. And could I have a motion to approve the consent agenda items A through M?
Chair, I'll go ahead and make a motion to approve the consent agenda items A through M as in Mike. Second.
So a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The motion passes. Okay, next, scheduled business. We have a presentation by Chief Guerrero. Come forward, please, Chief, to give a kind of a context to the next discussion, which is on work release. So,
Good morning, Commissioners.
Chief.
Thank you for this opportunity to kind of give you an update on where we're at with the proposed closing of the work release program. Currently, the jail has two programs, work crew and work release. In March of 2020, we ceased doing the electrical monitoring. It wasn't cost effective for us to maintain that post-COVID. In an effort to be good stewards of the taxpayers' money, we decided to take a review of our work release program. Currently, the program is designed for 30 beds. We currently charge $19 a day for the program and a single administrative fee, a one-time fee of $36. So to give you an example, someone doing a 30-day sentence on the work release program is looking at a total cost of $568.
A total, and I don't mean to interrupt you, Judge. I just want to make sure. So can you explain work release is work crew, work release,
Yes.
and work release is, go ahead.
Yeah, so someone who's sentenced by the court to conduct a work release or participate in the work release program, they turn themselves in after work every day. They do a minimum of 10 to 12 hours in the program. They're allowed a release from the program to go out and work, maintain their employment. And then once they're done, they come back in.
Okay.
The current program, the jail gives good time for the program. So they get one good time day for every 4 days sentence. So on a 4-day sentence, they get 1 day of good time. And so they'll actually serve and pay for the 3 days.
Let me interrupt you, because he brought up work crew is assigned to pay off fines.
Yeah, we no longer do that.
Oh, okay.
So they no longer work off their fines. So they're sentenced to work crew to just, instead of going to jail.
Yep.
For a 30-day sentence with good time, an individual will pay $473. They'll receive 7 days of good time on a 30-day sentence, just as an example. For the program to fund itself, we would need to maintain 18 participants a day to keep us budget neutral. And since 2009, we have only reached that average daily population of 18 or more 5 times. When we reviewed the program, we reached out to our local partners, the courts, the attorneys, the judges, and all expressed concern about losing the program and its effect on public safety. I reached out through WASPIC to all the county and city jails to find out who is currently running a program, what their costs are and such. And we only received 8 responses back. 6 county facilities, 1 city facility, and the second city facility has just closed their program. So,
So from the responses you're getting, it shows a pretty low rate of actual out of 39 counties actually using that program currently.
yes,
And the second thing is, I think I asked you yesterday, there's 62 people on an annual basis that are actually currently or have used, that were in that system or used the program.
yeah, sorry, go ahead.
And is that correct?
Yes, in
Ross?
2004, we only had 62 active participants.
And if you look at the case filings, there was thousands, literally thousands of case filings this in 2024. So you take those thousands, I got the number, but even if you took 5,000 cases in court case filings in 2024, you divide it by 62, it's less than 1%. So I don't see the cities or anybody, the city attorneys or anybody, are they actually asking to go ahead and use this program when they're filing cases?
No.
Okay.
The cities reached out and both explained, or the cities that responded explained that they understand the financial impact. We did reach out to the cities as well to seek funding for the program and only received 1 phone call inquiring about the total cost, but no one was interested in assisting with funding the program.
Appreciate it. Okay.
So in February, an email was sent out to the elected officials, city managers and department heads advising that we would no longer be accepting new applicants for the work release program starting in March 1st with an actual closing date of June 10th. This allows those on the program to complete their sentence in their time, and we would have no one pending. We did explain that they had 2 other options, was home monitoring through the local vendors. Their rates are usually cheaper. Like I said, we charge $19 a day. But one of the suggestions that was brought up or recommended by one of the attorneys was weekend jail. This allows participants that to come in and serve actual jail time on their days off. We thought that was a great idea. We've done it in the past. Our population is low enough that we could accommodate this request, and we did offer that. And this is no cost to the person. So they can come in and do their sentences on their days off. We release them at the end of a couple days, and they're able to go back and live at home and complete their work and fulfill their court commitments.
And then when you're doing like home electronic monitoring, you figure out some of the costs there. It's about the same cost or potentially less cost than work release
Yes.
to people that are, okay.
Yes, and when we did have the home monitoring program, it was less. We did associate good time with it and such, so it was cost effective.
Okay.
There was a lawsuit prior or pre-COVID of one of the counties because the home monitoring by law needs to be monitored 24/7. We could not accommodate that at the jail, so to reduce the county's liability, we ceased doing it and allowed the local vendors who could do a better job.
Like Moon Security, I don't know who does that here locally, but okay. That's what I thought. Thank you.
So the program is just not able to maintain itself. Like we said, we looked at the data from 2009 and only 5 times have we hit the minimum requirements for the program to fund itself. Last year's average daily population was 5, and it's just not cost effective to maintain.
Well, even if it's not cost effective, it's not even utilized that much by the judges, what I'm seeing. If you look at literally the thousands of cases that I got here for case filings in district court, because district court's primarily the one using it, not Superior Court. And you look at the number of individuals that use the 62 in 2024, that's less than 1%. And then I think that I'm going to look at some other numbers. I just got back into town, so I'm catching back up with everything. But I also looked at a PowerPoint and it had, and we'll get to that when that comes up. But, for someone that's offended more than once or twice or 3 or 4 times, I see the cost there, and I'm not going to go ahead and pay for that. There are multiple offenders. I'm looking at the cost, and by golly, someone's going to pay it, not the taxpayers of Benton County. So I appreciate the time.
Yes.
Question. So looking at the chart that you provided, do is anecdotal or anything to show, you know, what happened after COVID, why it went down so much? I mean, it seemed to be trending down a bit before COVID from when it first started, but then looking at that, you know, COVID, after COVID, it never really, that 2022, it had pre-COVID levels there for about maybe 6-7 months, and then it just dropped off. Do you know any reason for that?
It's usually the cost of the program. What we haven't tracked were the people that have been sentenced to the program that just can't afford it. Those that can, I mean, it's beneficial, but
Right.
it's expensive.
Yeah. What about, what are the expenses to staff that program? You know, how many staff?
Pre-COVID, we had an officer and a clerk do the position. Once we came back from COVID, we had staffing issues and such. So we reallocated that officer back to the main duties inside the jail and ran the program solely with clerical staff. We still have officer involvement. They have to search everyone who comes back
Sure.
into custody.
Yeah.
We have to do our security rounds and such. But the program is overseen by one of our clerical staff.
So what do you think the budget for that a year?
So total in a biennium,
If you include the correctional officer,
for a biennium, it's 250,000.
250,000. Okay. Any questions? Any other questions?
You helped them, you helped them go ahead and get my last question, so I was good. What the cost was.
I'm a quicker thinker than you.
That works.
Okay, thanks, chief.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bring up my next charts. Come on. Okay. Judge Zubro, if you want to come up now.
I'm not alone. Good
Okay.
Morning.
Being joined by Mr. Eisinger. and
Okay.
Mr. Roach.
Okay,
Just to kind of give you a feel from the prosecution, defense, and judicial
Okay.
side of the issue. But I want to preface our comments with, we have complete appreciation for the budget process and your obligation to be fiscally accountable to the public. And we're not here to question any of that. We look at this as kind of a program that has value, and this presentation is, for lack of a better word, a Hail Mary on our best day, that maybe we change minds about the value of the program. And on our worst day, maybe it's just something that we need to be discussing at Law and Justice, coming up with a solution in the future. And so, it's pretty much as simple as that. So,
And Judge, I appreciate it. Like I said, when I just got back into town and I heard that there was going to be a presentation, and I'm very open-minded, so that's why I appreciate you guys coming here and educating us. Maybe there's something that we're not aware of that you can bring to light.
I think just context. We ready to go? So I put together a slideshow. Mostly it's just to crunch some numbers, but Chief Guerrero talked a little bit about the different types of punishment. So you have home monitoring, where you can go to work, but at the end of the day, you eat at the dinner table with your family. You can binge watch Game of Thrones from your favorite chair and sleep in your own bed. Once upon a time, I lost a trial because a defense lawyer stood up with my witness, who I turned and said, he's been in the HBO program. And so I've called it the HBO program ever since. I don't think it's punishment. If you have a medical condition, mental health condition, you're old and frail, that's where home monitoring, in my opinion, comes into play as an alternative to incarceration. So work crew, you pick up garbage on the side of the road. Traditionally, maybe that's something we do. Let's say you're a low-level offender and there's just an accountability piece. Hey, you keep shoplifting, you're going to pick up garbage for 5 days. And then there's work release, where you can go to work, but when you're not at work, you come home and spend the night in jail. And so I'm going to kind of try to shape a little bit the dilemma we face in our courts. Most of the time we have complete flexibility. Punishment 0 to 90 days for misdemeanors, 0 to 364 days for gross misdemeanors. But there are some minimums that we deal with. So on a DUI second offense, it's 30 days jail, 60 days home monitoring. If you're over 1.5, it's 45 days, 90 days home monitoring. And so think about the difference between work release, no work release. How many employers are going to keep their employee who says, hey, on my best day, I got to take 20 days off with good time to go to jail, or 30 days to go to jail. And that's where the value of home monitoring really hits home, is people can keep their job. And there's a multiplier if you're on your third offense, and this actually is a fairly common occurrence in our community. You talked a little bit about usership. I'll let Mr. Roach comment on that. There's trends in DUI law. And in the middle of COVID, a case came out where they were challenging the Draeger machine. So that a lot of defense lawyers just said, we're not going to plead anybody out. We're going to stay all of our DUI cases until this gets resolved. So they're stacked up now. As soon as that was kind of shaping and getting resolved, an issue arose as to expired blood vials. So again, the defense bar took the position, we're not going to resolve our cases. So we have quite a backlog of cases from 2021, 2022, 2023, that when they get resolved, if they're unfavorably from the defense point of view, home monitoring is one option, work release is the other. But if we lose it, now we're forced to straight time, people losing their jobs, versus trying to decide whether home monitoring is appropriate.
You know, I Judge, I don't mean to interrupt. Like I said, when I was getting up to date yesterday in some meetings and stuff like that, out of the 62 cases, and maybe that's where there's going to be additional ones that we're missing out of that. 19 out of the 62 so it's less than 2/3. There's only less than a third were actually DUI cases out of the 62 work release. So it wasn't that many being used overall 62 in the work release program. So once again, I'm just looking at numbers and trying to figure this out.
Oh, I get you. But in terms of sentence, it's very rare to have a 30-day jail sentence for anything other than a DUI. Or the other thing we have to wrestle with, by statute, if you're on DUI probation and you drive without a license, no insurance, or without an ignition interlock, it's 30 days in jail for each.
Okay.
That's where this really hits home. Well, again, we have DUIs unadjudicated. As soon as they are, you're going to have this new category of probation violations.
Okay.
And people they're cash strapped. They have to get SR22 insurance. They got to pay for the ignition interlock. Yep. And they get caught in this cycle. And it's an economic driven cycle that they get caught in. They can't afford it, but they need to get to work. Over and over in court, you see people, hey, why do you keep doing this? Saturday I don't work. And so it's just a tough position.
Do any of those find their way?
I'm going to let Mr. Rhodes comment. At DUIs, there's quite a bit of resistance to allowing a repeat deferred prosecution, then go into therapeutic court. There's an accountability piece that it's kind of sometimes tough for the prosecution to agree to, but really, I'm sure Mr. Eisinger will be glad to answer that. But there's a lot of give and take, but there's some prosecutors that say, wait a minute, you did a deferred prosecution on your second one, and now you want to do therapeutic court, and you're avoiding the 45 days on that one, 90 days on this one. Where's the accountability for the fact that you keep drinking and driving? And it's a great place for some people. It's not the solution for everyone.
See, when I look at this, I got to be honest, and maybe I'm looking at it a little different. I look at the second offense and third offense, and that's what bothers me. And I'll tell you a personal time when I was in New Mexico. I worked at a police department down there. I was coming off a mountain with my wife, now girlfriend, then one of my friends, and we're coming down a mountain, and there was a gentleman that we saw at a little convenience store up on top. Had stolen a Corvette. We didn't know that at the time. And he got a few items and was going down there. State trooper was chasing him. They were going down quite fast. There was a young guy from coming from the Air Force going up the mountain to go ahead and see his family. This guy that was in the Corvette was definitely intoxicated, killed the guy. And I'm sitting next to this gentleman in a little Chevy Chevette. And when I was setting my truck looking down, it was piled up in the front of his dash. So I don't have a lot of sympathy for second and third offenders with DUIs. And so when I'm looking at a program like this, that's going to be kind of the moral value. I have to trust the judge and prosecuting attorney and the defense attorney and going, is work release the best thing for them or where they should be. So that goes into the, when you look at these programs too. And I'm just being honest with you. Because I've seen some bad things, and I know you as a judge have seen a lot of, you've seen it all.
I think if you ask around, I'm probably the old school crime and punishment guy. You do the crime, you do the time. But there are situations where you see people, they lose their job, they lose their housing, they're the sole
Family.
provider and their family, and then you lose your job, now you're facing eviction. Thefts follow, spin-off crimes follow, and it puts them in a tailspin that I don't think the crime and punishment piece was intended to do. And it's just the dilemma. I mean, Mr. Roach will tell you, he can tell you story after
Maybe we should
story.
start a DUI jail. Just lock them up and sober them up for 6 months.
Or have a work release component to that, in some form of reentry.
Yeah.
Not a bad idea.
Yeah.
And so that's the reason why I'm asking these questions is I'm trying to wrap, and that's why I know the interjection I can learn from that. If I can bring that in there.
So again, if you're habitual, think about this. You drive, you get 10 days minimum, second time 90, third 180. So think about the single mother who's driving to the grocery store. Think about just the criminal mindset of that versus someone who beats her life. We're mandating 90 to 180 days on a second offense, and we could do home monitoring if they can afford it, or it's straight time, which has a huge impact, but work release at least keeps money coming in, allows them to carry on. And these are the kind of
But
situations.
work release also is, if I make a mistake, that costs X, Y, Z amount to the individual as well.
Mhm.
So both of them are costing, one way or the other, it's going to cost the individual. And one was electronic
People
monitoring. so
working
cheaper.
though can find a way to pay. And that's the big one. If it's straight time, they lose their job. If they're working, they'll find a way to pay. And home monitoring, again, I'm not in love with it. I think it's the rare situation where you should get it. And I'll hit the big point here at the end, but everyone has a point of view when they come to court. He's conviction and holding people accountable. Mr. Roach's job, get the best deal possible. Well, you have this situation, if you can't do work release and you can't afford home monitoring, you do straight time. So the person who doesn't work, they do straight time, you have a good job, you pay for home monitoring. And as a judge, here's our perspective. Are we being neutral? Is justice fair? Is there equal access to justice? So if you have one person that comes in front of you, they do 90 days home monitoring because they can pay for it. And you have a second person that does the exact same thing, can't pay for home monitoring, they get straight time. There's this equality thing.
Well, yeah, but I guess I'm confused, and I sorry to interject. So if you're talking if they can afford home monitoring at $19 or whatever it is a day, but then you look at work release, and that's approximately $19 a day too. So it's straight across the board. So are you talking if it's indigent, where that's where you're going. That's why I wanted to know, because indigent is something if you. And I know that the majority of probably the cases or a lot of cases, because I've been into courtrooms kind of listening to everything and they're packed. I respect everything you guys do because it's not easy. But, I know that OPD has looked at that and in the past they had, if someone says, I don't have a job or I can't work or this, they don't do a background check. They don't even verify that as much. They're going to be starting to do that now. And they're starting to do that to make sure that they're actually cannot afford to do that. But now I understand what you're saying is you have to, I think the thing was you weren't saying indigent because across the board, they're about the same or home monitoring is a little less.
Right.
But if you're talking indigent, which the majority of cases, I would say, there's a lot of them are going to be indigent, then that comes up to the judge to decide if you want to do it. And then if that's the case, if it's the third offense, then it's costing the taxpayers $8,500 or just a lot of money for that third offense.
Absolutely.
Okay. So now I'm on the same page with you. I'm catching up.
Probably could have been presented a little better by me. This is I took two actual examples of defendants in our community and I summarized because in between you'll see thefts and other crimes. But this is the dilemma that we have on that. Go to the January 9 offense. 180 days for driving, whatever they get for the ignition interlock, and potentially another 120 days just because they drove suspended without an ignition interlock. And these are the people that come and say, hey, can't afford home monitoring, need to keep my job, or it's straight time. And that, you got to have some compassion for the person that says, if you give me straight time, I lose my I lose my home. I don't know where my family's going to be. And you do the crime, you do the time. I feel that 100%. But for me to say, I'm giving you work release, there's more of accountability piece because you're spending the night in jail, but you're still making money and the economic impact is lessened. So can you get creative here? You can run some of that time concurrent, but these are actual people who, this is a single mom, I can tell you that. It's his client. And he can tell you the dynamics of someone who's living check to check and the impact something like this has. And, this is tough for me because, again, this isn't the person conspiring to commit a crime like stealing or robbing a bank. Out of necessity, they drive. And there's a program to help pay for the ignition interlock, not a program to pay for SR22 insurance.
Yeah.
So the financial impact that comes with this is just something that, on a humanistic side, you wish there was a better solution out there in the community. It certainly isn't the county's obligation, but there aren't resources for a lot of people like this. This person, I would say at some point people give up. They just keep driving and they know what the consequence is, but they got nothing left. Now, if this person's working, they at least have the ability to maybe someday get their license back, pay for the ignition interlock. But this type of sentence here wipes people out. No matter what happens, life will go on. I've learned one thing in 20 years of public service: when you have a tough budget, things get cut, and you find the new normal and you make do. And that's clearly something we recognize, and we will adjust. But again, I just ran some numbers on someone who's trying to pay for home monitoring. I took an average between the two programs, but most people just can't come up with the money. And that's the thing that until we have some alternative funding source that picks people up a little bit, it's straight time, and straight time that is going to alter their trajectory in terms of housing, employment, and things of that nature. So I'll turn it over to Mr. Eisinger, and I think we'll all be glad to answer any questions you have.
And then real quick, Eric, as you go,
Yes.
once again, I'm pretty vocal on this. It's not necessarily about a budget or the financial side. It's about the use too. When I'm looking at the use compared to thousands of cases, it's less than 1%. And I don't know the number. I didn't have a chance to get the number of actual people that would be able to participate in this program. So, if I'm looking at thousands of cases and I got the number, it's an enormous amount of case filings in district court. I got it, but I'm nervous to say it because I want to fact check it, because it would be an enormous amount. Go ahead.
Let me interrupt. But goes to your point, a lot of this, if I understand correct, is there's two pending court cases on DUIs that have backlogged. So is most of this work release then used for DUI cases? And now because of this backlog, you're not asking for adjudication on your DUI cases until these two appeals have been heard on the machine and blood vials, right?
So, and those have both been heard.
Oh, they have been.
But
They haven't
in
been.
the last 6 months, let's say. So we had a COVID backlog to
Start.
about the time that eased up and we had trials going regularly. These two issues made their way to the Supreme Court or the Court of Appeals.
Have they
And
been?
so we waited those out basically, and they recently been resolved. So there's, of my own practice, which I do nothing but do like fencing, I probably have 150 cases that are maybe across the jurisdictions, but
Right.
that are backed up. Probably 50 of them will be work release related cases in Benton County. Because those were all the cases that had to wait because they were too ugly to negotiate, and waiting for the smoking gun to be suppressed.
So how did they,
Both negative for us.
okay, so now you're gonna start,
That's right.
now you're gonna start working on those. So, because there is on the chief's chart here, there is in 2022, they seem to be picked back up. And you're saying that that's probably, or could be because, well, the question, the bottom line is the majority of the work releases is done with the DUI, DWLS cases. I mean, that all stems from,
I would say that's probably a fair generalization.
I don't
most
know
of
about
them are used in that situation.
I'd be reluctant to say that a majority, but a lot, that's a very common case type to result in a work release sentence, but this is utilized in district court. Again, not knowing numbers, not wanting to guess, but I would say the majority of cases we're talking about district court jail commitments that are being served on work release. But it's also utilized in superior court cases. Anybody on a local sentence who is not going to DOC with a year and a day or more of a sentence, work release is a pretty common conversation.
I have some, out of the 62 participants in 2024, 18.
18.
Yeah, it was actually,
But again, that wasn't, so they're starting, the DUIs are starting back up. I mean, the cases, the resolve.
Mr. Roach is
resolution of the
working
case.
on scheduling a lot of appointments with my prosecutors to answer your question, Mr. Delvin.
so we're talking DUIs, but really what we're talking about, once again, is work release. We got to separate the two together.
Yes.
Once again, we got the numbers, that makes sense. I get it. I understand where the judges are coming from or on that side. To me, if there's an alternative other than work release, maybe there's another program for specifically for DUI cases where, you maybe have a sentence and we have a program that we create. That's something law and justice could look at to help maybe put a little bit more teeth to help support those people so they don't have second and third offenses. I could see something like that going down the road. And maybe that's where we had to put some of that funding. But once again, we're talking indigent cases, not, because if you look at it across the board, if they're about the same or home monitoring is less and it's saving the county taxpayers money, that's one financial side. But the other side is what do we do for those second and third offenses and how do we fix that? Maybe there's an alternative program. That would be something I'd be happy to talk about on justice with everybody. And I know you would too, Mr. Ison.
I would, yeah, and I
Let's
appreciate the board's attention to this morning. I was really surprised to hear that the program was so underutilized all the way back to 2009. That's a surprise to me. I do think that there's some pretty obvious explanations for what's happened in the course of the last couple of years. We had a public defender crisis in district court that really bogged down our ability to move cases and get cases to a resolution. Nobody's sentenced until a case is resolved, either by way of trial or by way of plea. So it doesn't surprise me that the numbers were just generally down in terms of work release last year, and DUIs as well because of the DUI issue. I just want to echo Judge Ziorbo's comments that the board I know is looking at this and wants to be fiscally responsible, and it makes sense that you would look hard at a program that's being underutilized and questioning, is this something that we want to maintain? My participation here today is really just to provide a little perspective from the prosecution side. There are cases that work release is the appropriate sentence. And what I mean by that is when we're prosecuting a case, we're looking at the circumstances of the case, the criminal history of the offender. We're looking at the seriousness of the offense and weighing it out and determining what needs to happen. There are some cases, like an armed robbery, we're never going to have a conversation about work release, right? This is somebody where we just need to go at them with everything we've got and get a prison sentence. There are other cases where we might look at something and say, yeah, that was a violation of law based on kind of a lesser criminal intent. Maybe no jail time needs to be imposed. The primary value of work release is it gives us one of these kind of middle ground options. We can say someone is deserving of some consequences, some punishment, but we have concerns about what this will mean in terms of their livelihood, whether they'll lose their job. It allows them to both keep their job and imposes a more significant punishment than EHM. I was in, our district court courtrooms when I recall, Judge Yobro, mentioned the HBO program, and I recall the EHM discussion of, whether that's an appropriate sentence. Someone can stay home, they can watch their Netflix all day. I think that there is a significant difference between EHM and work release. These are people, so the folks that go into a work release program, they're doing local jail sentences. So whenever that jail sentence is done, they're going to be out in our Tri-Cities community, in our Benton County community. And the primary value and the primary reason that we would ask the court to impose work release would be if they get to keep their job, they can pay their restitution, they can pay for their court-ordered treatment, they can support their families, and they're getting more meaningful punishment than you would get for electronic home monitoring at the same time. So it allows us kind of a middle ground position in terms of punishment, but also taking care of some financial realities. One of the unfortunate things that's happened in recent years is that legal financial obligations are not enforced like they used to be. They just are not, including restitution to victims. And if you have an unemployed defendant, it is very difficult for the court to force that defendant to pay meaningful restitution to a victim. And so that's one reason to, again, have these folks be able to maintain a job. Yes, sir.
So once again, we're talking two different things. If you have work release and it's costing 19 and some odd dollars a day and $36 filing, blah, blah, blah. You have electric home monitoring at 19 some odd dollars a day or a little less. Both are they're the same cost. But if you're talking about restitution and we're talking about that they can't afford the $19 a month and they're indigent, they're not going to pay restitution anyway. They don't have the money to do it. So what's the difference between the two? Does that make sense? I just don't see where, I don't care about it as we're talking $500 for their first offense on work release if it's costing them that much. Probably the same thing with home monitoring if they're about equal cost. But once again, if you're talking about restitution, and I get what you're saying, I think there should be restitution. But we're talking about those cases where if they can't afford on their first offense $500, but they can go to work either way, and one spends time in jail in the evening, one doesn't. But if they can't afford to do that, and you're talking restitution, where's the money coming from? There's no money for restitution. So once again, I don't think that's a viable argument when it comes down to
Well, the legislature's ended restitution, basically.
Yeah, no, I agree. So that's where my rub is. I'm just looking at it. I think this would be something more important to go ahead and brainstorm to see. I'm for some type of alternative program, and maybe work release is it. I don't know if this is the place to do it. I think going into our Law and Justice Council meeting, I understand.
Mr. Rhodes.
Well, and
Get his perspective.
If I could just give
Yeah.
one or two more comments really briefly, and I'll make it quick. So there are cases where, again, we would say, it's just not appropriate to have someone sitting at home watching their Netflix. That's not enough punishment for what happened. So that's the primary concern about whether EHM should be imposed. So in a situation where we're choosing between EHM and straight time jail, we've got two fairly divergent options, right? And the work release option is kind of that middle ground. There's more punishment, but there's also an ability to keep your job and to take care of some financial obligations. One comment I wanted to make is it's very common for the court when you're entering a judgment and sentence, Judge Yobro can speak to this, to authorize multiple kinds of methods of service. So they might say 30 days of jail to start in 2 weeks from now, and it can be served straight time jail, work release, or work crew. Defendant talks to the defense attorney and they have some conversations and make a decision about how that gets served. So the option can play into the negotiation, the plea, the sentencing, even if it's not utilized. So, and I don't know what the specific number, I haven't researched, for instance, how many judgment and sentences authorize work release. That'd be an interesting number to know, to your point, but it's far more than the people who actually serve the work release for varying reasons.
How many city prosecutors, you have your city attorneys and prosecutors like Mike Rio, how many of them actually ask for work release?
It's a very common request.
all
They all ask?
of them would almost always stay for the straight time versus either,
Okay.
I mean, generally speaking, I can say.
No, that's good to know. I appreciate it.
One last thing, just before I sit down is, from a prosecution standpoint, work release is a significant negotiation tool. We're often in conversations with the defense where we're talking about different sentences and we're trying to come to a resolution. We deal with I mentioned this a couple of weeks ago when I was before the board. We regularly deal with cases where we have reluctant victims who we have a difficult time bringing into the office. They don't maybe want to participate in court or testify. This gives us one more option in those negotiations where the defense is getting something, they're getting the opportunity for this defendant to keep their job, but we're able to use that as something that we can get cases done with that as another tool. So again, realizing there's this financial component that just is that's the reality of what that is. But maybe there's an opportunity at some appropriate point to revisit whether this could come back or we could keep. Thank you.
No, I appreciate it, Ms. Eisinger.
And if I could just, first of all, endorse everything that my colleagues, which are on different sides of this, have mentioned to you. The only thing that I think was maybe missing from all of this, as it relates specifically to DUIs, is that in a second or subsequent DUI, mandatory minimum sentence. So the legislature has written these sentences out for judges. You have to do this. On that 30 or 45 days second offense jail portion of the mandatory minimum, or on a third 120, 90 or 120 mandatory minimum jail portion. So that third offense is a 90 plus 120 EHM. It's a sentencing scheme that the legislature's had for the 25 years that I've been practicing. They define confinement for that first jail portion to exclude, by definition, EHM. So on the front end of every one of those second or subsequent sentences, it has to be confinement that allows the definition of partial confinement, which excludes EHM, but includes work release and excludes work crew. So the conundrum that I face, and that I can tell you the defense bar as a whole faces, is that on those second or subsequent offense DUIs, we can't ask the judge to get creative and say, look, my guy's gonna lose his job if he does 30 straight days in jail. Can you please give him even just 15 days? He can take his PTO or whatever, I mean, and do 2 weeks of real jail, and then can you give him the rest on EHM? The judge is disallowed from doing it. So there's this legislative constraint on how those sentences, and this work release was the sweet spot. And it certainly, as a practitioner, I can say over 25 years, has supported folks being able to continue to support their own family. And to be honest, even as a defense attorney, asking for a whole bunch of ankle bracelet time where they can smoke pot all day long and probably not get caught doing it, honestly, doesn't even seem very morally correct to bring to a judge and say, look, do this instead, please. Sometimes there is an accountability piece that even we recognize as defense attorneys. And if this, you're spending every single night in jail just like a regular defendant, but you get to go out for this window of time and actually produce in our community. That to me is just about the most excellent kind of sentence for a non-felony offense. And it certainly worked over the years of my practice, by example, to allow a guy to learn a lesson and move on and still keep his job. That's the bottom line. So when these folks are confined or prohibited by statute from using their own creativity, and this work release fit the definition of allowing some means of keeping your job, that's the critical thing for all of us defense practitioners. So I do want to make just a plain statement that in communicating with all of the regular court practitioners over the last couple of weeks when I thought this meeting was going to happen, unilaterally, the entire defense bar supports the work release program. And I can speak for every one of my colleagues on that. In fact, I don't know if there are many practitioners on any side of this, whether it's the judiciary, the prosecutors, or the defense lawyers, that don't desire to have this as part of the sentencing opportunities. Budget-wise, I understand those things too. But there, I believe, will be a more robust need for this as a lot of these DUI cases do get resolved based on a 4-year backlog that are going to hit here pretty soon, or starting to hit right now. So otherwise, I think my colleagues have covered the issue thoroughly, and I regret that we're in this budget situation where we have to make this kind of a decision, but it is certainly a useful tool from all angles. And it allows people to keep paying their fines and keep their jobs, which I think is important.
Would the weekend commitment work within the legislative constraints?
It does, I believe. I haven't done the exact research on that, but it has to be full confinement. And so therefore, those days in a row would be full confinement. But think about it. You're doing a 45-day sentence, and you got every weekend, or say you take 3 days, you take every Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. You're extending a sentence out. Walla Walla Work Release, in my experience, has done something like that with their work release. You can do a few here and a few there. Well, hell, you're doing a 45-day sentence in 9 months. So is it a workaround? Possibly, yes.
Does it keep them sober?
Well, no. And work release, by the way, unlike the HBO program, which you're referring to EHN as, which
Right.
I don't disagree with in a lot of ways. And that's a defense attorney saying.
Well, they gotta be sober when they show
The
up.
work release program, you're incredibly accountable. You're 100% certain to be sober, or you get tanked and you sit the rest of that time out. And maybe with no good time. I don't know if I bet they take away the good time too.
So you brought up, and because I was back in the legislature, you remember Marlon Applewick. I don't know if he's still an appeals court judge or not over in the West Side. No, he was a Democrat, and I was a Republican. We worked on DUI legislation. We had a good, but then that little organization called MAD came in and tanked everything. And that's what we have today, is because of advocates for harsher penalties on DUI.
Or it's taking away the power from the folks.
Right, and that's what they
standing right
did,
there
but
in
that's
the
what MAD wanted. And who's gonna tell the mother
Right,
of a victim, a victim of a DUI,
of course.
boy, these two guys over here have an idea, no, we don't want that. So that's where we're at. Of course, I don't think they're active anymore, but maybe that's something that needs to come back to the legislature to look at this. Some kind of either they put treatment dollars into it and say, all right, if you get your second and third, obviously you have an issue, a problem, right?
Right.
One time we can maybe say, oh, well, okay, screwed up, right? But second and third time, then you got issues, you got problems. And so maybe that's something that the trial lawyers should go to the legislature too with judges and everything and bring some kind of sanity to the DUI laws and force more treatment into the sentencing and just, I get the reason why they want to confine those people, but that's not reality in a lot of ways. So, well, we got till June, right? That's what maybe we can get together and come up with a solution. I think you mentioned
Law Justice
Law
Council.
Justice Council, but maybe just form a small task force of just defense attorneys, prosecutors, cities too. I think the cities need to be
Yep.
involved,
Sure.
and with the judges, and find a workaround with the RCWs that really restrict judges on what they can sentence. Chief, you said there's only 6 8 counties responded and none of them have work release anymore? Or just the one?
Just the 6 counties.
They responded that they have work release.
Out of 39.
Out of the 39.
Franklin County got rid of it 15 years ago,
Yeah.
approximately, and similar budget issue.
Right.
The legacy person that was running it retired and they didn't want to fill the, and then it went
Right.
away.
Well, maybe I mean, it's for your guys' benefit if we can come up with some kind of a funding or something. Are you willing to sit down?
I don't have a problem. I do the long distance council. Yeah, I don't have, to me, I guess I look at it this way, and I am so open, I'm pretty open-minded, and I respect the judge, the PA, and the defense attorney here coming in and taking the time to talk to us about that and educating. I think we need a little bit more information. It's not necessarily just a budgeting thing to me. It's moral values and ethics. Judge, I respect what you said, and because you hit a point where I think that's important when you have a family or single mother and it spirals and it affects kids and family. That's important to make the right decisions on that. So I get that part of it. I understand. So it's not just budget. I understand the portion I'd like to know. Then I know we could probably find that out. One of the reasons why I was kind of looking at this in maybe an unfavorable way was you're talking DUI. We can't just talk DUI. We have to talk a whole gamma. And it's less than a third of the cases or a work release was DUI. So I have to understand that portion of it. At the same time, we're talking about jobs, and I heard that a lot, making their jobs. Well, out of the 62, actually, I would like to know how many of them actually had a job that were on work release. We'll find that out.
It's a program requirement.
They
You
get
have,
vetted. I mean, their work schedule will be approved by their supervisor. I mean, they can speak more specifically
Yeah.
on that, but it's a fairly well vetted.
See, that's something that's as we get together or whatever, we wanted to do something like that. It's up to you, Chair. Okay, Robert wants to do that, is to get a little more educated so we can look at that. Maybe we have an alternative or we do something better.
If you're willing to
I knew you were going to throw me in front of the boss.
Yeah, if you're willing to participate, well, you got a lot of good questions there. You seem to be very interested in it, and maybe.
He does this to me in DC and Phoenix too.
Maybe, I'm just saying,
Yeah, no,
suggesting that, if you are willing, and Mr. Roach, someone from your, full disclosure, he did contribute to that campaign. Public disclosure that you can find on the PDC. Yeah, you can find it, we go back a long way. Oh, he's looking at Hawaii pictures, trying to catch up on Hawaii.
No, I'm good. I think
But maybe get a group together, and see what come up with.
that'd be great. And just to
Talk,
echo, Mr.
bring the
Roach's-
chief into discussions too.
just to echo Mr. Roach's comments, it's not just a defense issue. You would think,
Right.
like, why does the prosecutor want
Right.
to have this
Right.
program if it's for defendants? Well, again, it's a tool that we can use to resolve cases. It's actually a really meaningful tool. It's what gets cases done sometimes. And
Maybe
sometimes
get-
it's the
Yeah.
right outcome. Like,
I
you
think
look
we-
at it and you're saying, like, this is maybe not somebody that we just need to lock up and throw away, but they need a consequence. It's more than the.
Well, maybe.
No, I appreciate it. I
Maybe
appreciate
we
that.
can get our staff to work with Commissioner Alvarez's schedule and throw out some dates to
I'd be happy.
That'd be
times to,
Okay. That'd
yeah,
be great.
and invite the cities into
Yeah.
Yeah.
the discussion.
I'll be in the courtroom the next few days. I'll mention to the city prosecutors. what I do
Okay.
with every hearing.
Okay,
Say that we had this meeting. and
Okay.
we'll Try to collaborate.
okay.
So just as a next step, we can get an email group to Amanda and,
Yep.
or we
Right.
want to work through law and justice.
Which, you
No,
know what?
I think you gotta need separate there. They
Yeah.
only meet month.
Yeah, I think it would be good just to get all of us in the room that way. That'd work.
We'll get you a list and ball rolling.
Okay.
Yeah,
Really
that'd be great.
appreciate
Thank
it.
you
Appreciate
very
it.
much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Really appreciate
Yeah,
it.
till June. Okay, thank you. That was good 10 minutes.
Sorry about that. Hey, it's,
Okay, Adam's got a minute.
I'm going to pay for it later, aren't I?
No, I'm happy. Sit here and talk all day. Good morning. Morning.
Top of the morning to you.
Okay, you're gonna talk about the rural capital fund. I know you, Mr. Atkins, had a question on it.
In fact, I might even answer it.
Okay.
I'm gonna ask you to deploy $9.5 million this morning.
Eh,
Brings people all kinds of reactions.
what's with the city that did 320 million annually, so, no, it's all good.
Yeah, it's up here.
Okay,
It's on my,
no, whatever.
let's take it, there we go.
All right, Commissioner, a little bit of an update on Rural County, and then we've got 3 action items today. Well, the first off here is we've been making a few minor changes to the program and a few more in the works. So I've tried to take us for our review activities to a more quarterly schedule, more or less. I guess we're still kind of on demand or as needed, but try to get our meetings scheduled out for the year and let folks kind of know what's going on. The requests from the cities and ports are coming in a little more slowly now than they did in the past. So it makes it a little easier on us. In the early years, you're getting an onslaught of them. So
That's just for informational purposes and to the public maybe listening in, that the Rural Capital Fund is state 0.09 of the state sales, or the sales tax collected in Benton County. It comes back from the state. It's the state's portion of that, comes back to the county. We call it the Rural Capital Fund, or the 09 money comes back to the county. And we have agreements with the port districts and the cities and to how that money is allocated out to each of those entities. But the money has to be spent on economic development.
you've hit it all correct, Commissioner. I always like to emphasize that this is not a tax or a fee that commissioners impose. This is nothing you can repeal. Right? These are taxes that people pay. What you have the choice in is if the money go to live here, to stay here. And every county chooses that is eligible, chooses to keep money. That amounts to, right, I'm going to get to the numbers in a moment, but I'll just say offhand, right now, over the last year, that's $500,000 a month, every month that's being retained.
It's big.
And then that gets dispersed to the 8 partners. So Benton County, 2 ports, 5 cities. So it's not chicken scratch, it's real money. We also implemented an interview requirement. In the early times, we didn't do that. Sometimes if we had some questions on an application that came from one of the partners, we might ask them to come in and clarify things. But there wasn't an interview or a presentation requirement. We do now have that. Seems like a good thing to do. Some other future changes that we're working on. I think we already have a great public reporting on this, especially when I look at other counties and what they're doing. We have websites set up. We're going to rejigger some things. And then this is a little booklet that we do for the Yakima Basin Fish and Wildlife Recovery Board. And this is 20 years worth of projects in it. Katie and I are working on something like this, a little bit of a handbook that folks could have to look at the history of projects and the impact they've had. Making some changes to the billing. Each one of the partners kind of does the billing their own way, and it's a little bit of gymnastics for me. So I'm trying to streamline that and change some of the billing. And then also the reporting. We have a reporting requirement in everybody's contract. Maybe I haven't been so good at holding everybody to that. And so I try to get the quarterly reports from everybody. No problem. There we go. Okay, I'm not going to read a bunch of numbers to you, but I think commissioners and other folks see, and it's on the website. Linda every month puts together an update, puts that out on the first day of every month of how much money's come in and where it's parceled out to and the different parties. But there is one number on here I call your attention to. I kind of referenced it a little bit here already, but the bottom left red number is $50 million. In the 9 years that we've been doing this phase 3 of the program, we've now reached $50 million in total accumulated funds. That's a lot of money. I mean, not all of that has gone out yet, as I'm going to get to here in a moment, but we've now reached $50 million in the program. Okay, so here, this is as of right now, and hopefully this changes a little bit in about 10 minutes. There's the $50 million. That's total accumulated funds. And so far, either money that we've paid out or is under contract is a little under half of that, $24 million. Now, one of the reasons I kind of keep track of this, at least for myself, is you might remember some years back, there was a little bit of fuss made, and I think we see in the newspaper at some point, public safety sales tax. And, Benton County's hoarding all this money. Folks saw that there was 8 figures sitting there and maybe not understanding how the program works, how much budgeted. And there was some noise about that. We're not getting all this public safety sales tax and you're spending the money. That wasn't true, but there's a little bit of perception there. So I like to see that red number here bumped up a little bit. That shows that we're deploying more of the money into the community. And after today, since it's some pretty big contracts on the table, people certainly look more that way. We'll be up over 2/3. And in the pipeline in the next few months, there's some other big asks coming. So I think we're going to see that number well over 50%. In other words, we have $30 million in the bank right now. We have $30 million in cash. That is either under contract, not yet spent, or is sitting there unobligated. So that's what we're carving into. In the 9 years, 20 projects completed. 2 of them are still underway right now. 3 of them are in front of you today. And I anticipate 3 more in the next weeks and a couple of months. So still very busy. All right, talk about those 3 projects. First one is another project for the Port of Benton out at Vista Field, $1 million. This is street work, parking work, utilities, drainage over near the hangars where we've spent $3.5 million already, and that project's wrapping up. And where a couple months ago, a new Japanese restaurant groundbreaking took place, and the eye clinic that was just announced in the last couple of weeks are going to be built. So over in that area, that contract is in front of you today.
Adam, real quick, just one thing I know on that. So as we go forward, there's a lot of economic development there happening, and that's going to be good for property taxes. It's going to be good for sales tax. A lot of that revenue some of that revenue comes into the county, which helps maintain our services as cost goes up to keep costs or keeping it down. So I think it's a great thing.
Our 2 main thresholds for this is, but you have 8 partners, including ourselves, and everyone kind of has their own little spin on what economic development means. And the law says for economic development purposes, and leaves that open to interpret. We kind of go back to what are the jobs created or retained, and what's the tax impact. And if you can demonstrate that you can have a positive impact on those, that's kind of the main threshold. Say, all right, because a project that the port might bring and a city might bring, they look different, big cities, small cities. We wrestle with these things a lot because not everybody brings the perfect project in. Sometimes we have to kind of, massage it a little bit and look at things and make sure that we feel like we can defend it for our own policy. And so we have over the years rejected people.
Yeah.
That has happened. Second project we talked about today, $1.5 million. This is for over by where the Costco is being built on Dupertail. So I'll stretch of Dupertail Street and 2 of the roundabouts there. Again, street widening, sidewalks, ingress, egress, stormwater, utilities, this sort of thing. That's what the city's working on. And then finally, by far the biggest award we will have made in the 9 years. This request for $7 million. People asked, the city of Kennewick has not had a project of their own yet until now. They were a partner with a couple of port projects. This is the first time they've come to us with their own project, and they were waiting to do this for quite a while. So they were wanting that war chest to build up. This was foreseen that when the convention center expansion would happen, they would want to use their money for this. And this $7 million will basically wipe out everything that's in their bank account right now. So that's the request from them. This is all going to an $80 million convention center expansion. Folks sitting down in Kennewick today will be able, within the next few months, to start looking out the window to the left of the jail and see that project happen. That project is underway. All right, we recommend that that be funded as well. Final slide. So today we've got those 3 projects in front of you. Probably need a motion for each of those independently. And then what you'll see here going on in the next several weeks is there's 3 more projects on the way. So one of the other things about this convention center expansion is the city wants to explore something that we haven't done before. We've kind of resisted it a little bit in the past, but I think we're open to it now. And I need to get back to work with Mr. Altman and his staff on how we'll craft this in an agreement. But City of Kennewick would like to have an ongoing agreement where basically as the funds come in, they're able to bill against that going forward on their debt service. So even long after construction is done, we will still kind of pay the debt service on that into the future.
That's because the legislature changed the law and there's no end date now. We had an end date of what, there was an end date
It was
of
2031, that's been
31.
extended to 2054, so it's just you and I that'll be left here, Commissioner.
I
in
know.
2054,
Or
yeah. And so-
Jim, you gonna be around in 2054? Yep, he's too, so. But now that can actually happen and the law allows.
That's true. I mean, another reason that we were a little bit resistant to it was, and I'm still gonna put some guardrails on this, is we don't really want to
Sure.
tie the hands of future boards.
Sure.
So I think the city will want a longer term on this. I'll probably seek something shorter, and they can always be renewed. But we'll either set a top end number by month or by the quarter, or we'll work it out.
Something.
Yeah.
Right.
Makes sense.
Going forward, we'll allow them to pay off past construction with future.
Right. Okay.
West Richland has another project out by their city hall area, and the Port of Benton is going to do some work up in North Richland on the railroad terminal and their whole inland port area. So I think you'll see some other good projects. We've already reviewed the West Richland one, so you can see a contract coming forward, and I expect Diane Howard to bring the ports project in a couple of months. Also, you know, we're going to start, hopefully here by the end of the year, start digging into our own allocation at the fairgrounds. And so I'm going to bring a resolution to you regarding that as well, just sort of having a resolution to tie those expenses to, but we're going to hopefully begin the arena project, and that will tap these funds. And then finally, as you'll recall, got a state auditor finding regarding not having the economic development plan properly updated to reflect port projects. So I'll be bringing a revision to you here shortly, probably the next thing you see from me, so that we have these port projects adequately reflected in our plan. Tom, Jim, what was your question?
The question was about the signature. Can they just, all they have to do, print their name next to their signature?
So Jim, here's the reality. Folks don't like doing that anymore. Folks don't like doing that anymore. So what you've been seeing, all of these contracts we got from the city, and the way I think commissioners are going to do it today is with DocuSign or some similar arrangement. The way DocuSign sort of makes your signature official is by sort of stamping the document with a unique number. And this allows folks to just go through and basically hit a button and auto sign. And that's what all the cities and the ports like to do now. And I know you can't read it very well, and I can't either, but that's how they're doing it. No one's wet signing stuff anymore. And I don't control that. That's everyone's preference. I know it's our clerk's preference. I know it's a lot of folks' preference because it's very easy and you can't always read it very well. And maybe over time, DocuSign will figure that out, make it a little bigger, do something.
You let Mr. Spencer know you're going to draw money though.
I mean, that's just how it is, Joe.
What's that?
I would want to make one comment. Nice to know that we invest out.
Right,
for a period of time,
right.
And we suck a lot of money out. I'm going to end up selling some bonds at the low market.
Because it's short notice.
It would be helpful if we had information on it in 9 months, 10 months, in 3 months, we run these kind of funds. You'll get a chance. I can plan on how we can hold money out.
Yep.
I keep a certain amount of liquid capital for emergencies, but
Yep.
not for planned expenses.
Right.
So, it would be helpful. I noticed they had a group up there that was on the committee. It'd be helpful if we had me there, so I understood when they were talking about $7 million. That's a lot of money coming out of that bond.
Yeah.
And if I have to sell a bond that we bought during COVID that is paying less than 1% interest, in order for me to sell that bond, I'm going to have to discount it, get somebody to come and buy it off.
Yeah, no, totally, Ken.
I'm looking at this and think, hey, it's great that we're doing this, but give me some warning where you want the money so that I can pull some money back out. I've got $5 million coming back on the 31st. I won't invest that if I know I have to do something like this.
No, that totally makes sense. 100%. I get it. I appreciate you telling us that because we'll watch
It'd
it.
be helpful if I had, that's, we fight with a lot of groups that invest with us to get us good cash flows so that we know when they're thinking about doing something.
I'll get with the treasurer on that.
Yeah, and then Jim, I purposely on DocuSign made my signature very legible for you. He brought it to the attention. Okay.
I would just add, just to that point, though I got contacted just yesterday by the city of Kennewick, just making sure this is happening today. I'm not expecting a bill tomorrow for $7 million. So it was to be stretched out over time a bit, but they are eager to start billing against it. And I'll have the same conversation with them and I'll get with you again.
Adam, do you have anything on Benton City? Have they looked at is there any economic, I know I'm putting you on the spot a little bit. Is there anything that we can do? Are they asking us for anything that would be viable that actually qualifies for economic development?
That's always kind of our
Sure.
most challenging place. Now, we've done multiple projects in Benton City.
Yeah.
We have. They've been smaller ones. I think they've got about 2.5 million sitting in their reserve.
Okay.
There have been a few things that they've brought forward that we just really couldn't.
It didn't meet the
Yeah,
mark.
we just
Okay,
couldn't.
okay.
I've been talking with Council of Governments, with other folks about working with Benton City and the port, both ports actually, to see if we can try to come up with some ideas, help them with some things.
Okay.
One of the things that made it nice here in Prosser was Prosser had one big project out here at the hospital.
Yep.
And so Prosser has some of the same issues as far as the ability to find viable projects. They just happen to find one really big one. And so I just kind of
That makes
wiped it
sense.
out for them. And Benton City hasn't had that project. But I know they've got some challenges and I've worked with the mayor quite a bit and we're trying to identify some.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay, we're ready for any other question, motions then?
Oh, I'm ready to go on motions if you're
Okay.
ready.
Yep.
All right, Chair, I'll go ahead and move for the county to enter into the disbursement agreement with the city of Kennewick for the use of rural county capital funds toward expansion of the Three Rivers Convention Center in the amount up to $7 million.
Second.
Motion is second, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Nay, the ayes have it, motion passes.
Next, I'll move for the county to enter into a disbursement agreement with the city of Richland for the use of rural county capital funds toward the Dupertell Street Improvements Project in the amount of up to $1.5 million.
Second.
Have a motion and a second, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay, the ayes have it, passes.
And lastly, I move for the county to enter into a disbursement agreement with the Port of Kennewick for the use of rural county capital funds toward expansion of the Vista Field parking and utility improvements in the amount of up to $1 million.
Second.
Have a motion and a second, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay, the ayes have it, the motion passes. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, other business. Commissioner McKay, anything?
No, I've been getting bugged a lot. What can we do as commissioners to push for male identifying as a female in women's sports? Can we, as commissioners, push that on school and like school boards and stuff? Because I've been getting bugged a lot, and I got an email. I don't know if you guys read it too. Yeah,
I mean, we don't, I
know
read
we're
that
almost
email. We
city.
don't have any playgrounds or sports fields. The county doesn't
Correct.
have any of those, so.
is it something though that us commissioners can like maybe staff write up a letter and we
You could
make
do a
motion?
letter
to the school boards.
or a resolution or something.
That's what I would do.
Yeah, work with staff.
Yeah, because I had a daughter play against transgender male in Seattle in volleyball, and one of their teammates got a broken nose.
Yeah.
And so I'm just completely against
Right.
it, and I just am
Okay.
kind of shocked that the school boards aren't pushing for that to get that out, make that happen.
Talk to staff and see
Yeah,
what.
so I think if we could talk to staff and have them do a resolution, I'd appreciate that.
Okay,
Just to go towards
Okay.
Richland, Kennewick, all
Right.
the school boards again. Or the state, I don't know.
you can send it,
Yeah.
you can send it out.
Nope,
You're good?
I'm good today.
Staff?
I talked enough.
We got executives. Anything? No? Mr. Spencer?
I mean,
Okay, okay. Well, I have a special presentation here.
Oh, here we go.
Above and Beyond Award is presented to Will McKay. Without your willingness and impressive reading capabilities, the meeting on March 11th would not have gone as smoothly as it did. Thank you for being present at the correct location and going above and beyond your regular duties to keep others in those difficult times. Your efforts do not go unnoticed. And here's a $15 Chick-fil-A gift card.
Jeez Louise. And not 20 because, yeah.
my face, is my face red?
Not, yeah, oh, yeah. You didn't get the 20 because you lowered.
Since you mentioned Chick-fil-A, I did notice when we did that stuff with Adam, where that, Richland, money, we should also be putting that towards the Chick-fil-A too. That's going out by the concept, so.
Okay. Okay, Union, Carly, how much time do you need? 5 minutes. Okay, we're gonna go into, executive session for 5 minutes. It's 10:20, on union negotiations. Okay, sorry, it's 10:26. We had some technical difficulties getting up the resolution after no decisions were made in the executive session. You have a motion.
I'm going to try this.
Okay.
We'll see if it works.
Okay.
I make a motion authorizing the chair of the board of Benton County Commissioners to sign the separation and release agreement between Benton County and Jeffrey Rosley.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The motion passes. The pending litigation, the executive session has been canceled and moved probably next week. So with that, the meeting's adjourned. Everyone have a good rest of the day. Thank you.